This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, so today we're going to be going over some of the consumer protection, just a couple examples of consumer protection regulations so that we can talk about some of the pros and cons that happen with each one and ultimately start to gain some insight into ways that they might help and ways that they might hurt depending on the issues we're looking at or some of the problems out there. So, but first, I want to share a little bit about one of the reasons I'm doing this. I certainly believe in freedom at its core. And to me, freedom doesn't mean anarchy. It doesn't mean there are no laws. And I always view freedom as an appropriate balance of laws where we provide a foundation for society to operate and interact together, but one where we also respect certain rights and responsibilities of the individual. And so I believe that in a free society, one where it's properly balanced, we can really excel as a society and do well and allow for people to do good things and be good. So that is the type of society that I certainly prefer, one that's not ruled by the government, but also one that's not ruled by anarchy or other considerations. So with that, on that, this is just a little statement, but ultimately I believe that while a lot of freedoms are being lost, I believe the government has become too heavy-handed in many areas. I do believe that there's a lot of good and much opportunity to build good in the world. And so to me, as I've worked to integrate my beliefs with my actions more and more and understand how those apply in the law, it's helped me, I think, be able to better stand for freedom and support that. So again, that's part of the purpose of our discussion today. And we will go through some of these items here. So generally, consumer protection laws are viewed by most as there to help protect consumers from bad corporations or businesses. We all know of a business that's shady, that says whatever they need to get a sale. Now we often think of used car salesmen or attorneys as part of this, and so that's the main background that we often operate from. But currently in America, most consumer protection laws, when they're passed, they're actually pushed by businesses themselves. So just a question, why do you think businesses often promote so-called consumer protection statutes? Do you have any thoughts on why that might be?
I think it's an easy value proposition, or an easy marketing angle to come out and say these are things that we offer, and kind of makes your brand stand out a little bit more.
Okay.
I was thinking it might even the playing field a little. If you're doing what is good for consumers and others aren't, you would maybe support some statutes.
Yeah, for sure, because it can be expensive to do the right thing. And businesses often, if they're trying to do the right thing and other businesses aren't, then they can have a competitive disadvantage for sure. And that's a good point. And it's one that, as we look at things, we'll see it can go both ways with businesses. It's an interesting conundrum that we get caught in. But we will explore this question a little bit as we look at this, because ultimately consumer protection laws started and businesses were very opposed to them because it was tightening the reins. But now it's almost like these consumer protection laws are becoming a form of attack for a lot of businesses, and they're starting to use them. So again, on the balance side of things, I think it's helpful to start to look at where we're at and how necessary each regulation is arisen. So we'll jump into an issue here in Utah. Leah, are you able to read that for us? If you're in front of your screen, maybe. And you're on mute, so we can't hear anything right now.
Sorry, I'm not available at the moment, Austin.
Okay, no worries. Ryan, what about you?
Yep. Many attorneys in Utah are upset right now. The Utah Supreme Court has decided to allow non-attorneys to have ownership in law firms. The frustrated attorneys claim that this will harm individuals and should not be allowed. They say that non-attorney owners do not know the law and will push attorneys to make decisions that are driven by profit, not by what is right or appropriate for the individuals. Should the changes take place? This is funny.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on that?
No, I can totally understand, right, the position of non-attorneys, but I think it could be viewed as well on the flip side, right, of, you know, turning the table a little bit and letting somebody from the outside look at how, you know, attorneys are perceived and, you know, the way that they go to market and the way that they, you know, run their businesses. So again, should they be allowed to practice the law? No, but I think that they can assume different roles within a company, administrative, whether it's HR, whether it's marketing, whether, you know, they can really help these firms succeed as well.
Okay, I appreciate those thoughts. Does anyone have any other thoughts on whether we should allow non-attorneys to own law firms here in Utah? It's been banned for, I don't know, probably about 100 years or so, maybe not quite that long. But for quite a significant amount of time, they've banned non-attorneys from owning law firms. And we could ask too, what are some of the pros of keeping law firms owned solely by attorneys? You know, see, and Susan, curious if you have any thoughts there on, you know, just
I
your
don't. I didn't know that it existed or the pros and cons, so I can't say. But thanks for asking. Go ahead and give some thoughts.
Yeah, no problem. So on this one, it's the attorneys have said for a long time that we've got to keep the practice of law pure. We've got to protect the individuals. And what we've seen happen in the law is that law firms have created quite the market, and typically the cost of an attorney is extremely high to get even basic legal work done. And so these attorneys, in my opinion, one of the things they're really frustrated about at this point is that these protectionist laws, these licensing laws, have allowed for them to charge a very high premium for their services. And when non-attorney owners come in, they will provide services for a lot cheaper than attorneys will. You'll have them come in and make software that can duplicate a lot of the easy things, you know, wills and trusts and even divorce papers. There's all kinds of forms that are incredibly standardized in the law, and it's not difficult to replicate those with the software or something else. And in the past, we do have things like LegalZoom. At the end of the day, they have to say, we can't guarantee that this form is any good. But now the LegalZooms of the world will be able to say that it is a legally valid form and be able to sell it for $25. And the attorneys won't be able to charge $1,500 for that same document. A lot of them state that, you know, they're not going off for profit motive necessarily. They're really concerned about the quality that people will get and this, that, and the other. But this boils down to ultimately a question of, one of the things I like to ask is, if there were no licensing laws for attorneys, how would you go about selecting an attorney if you had to just go find someone and decide whether they were qualified or not?
So-
our only attorney experience, I guess, is was fighting someone we knew that's an attorney.
Okay.
So I don't know how we'd find an attorney if we needed one like here, where we don't know anybody.
Yeah, and so even with licensing laws, it's hard to say, who would I find? But let's just say there were no licensing laws, anybody could claim to be an attorney. It makes the decision a little bit more difficult. But it's interesting to start to think about what we would do if we didn't even have that basic licensing differentiation. So Ryan, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just like anything, if I'm, seeking services, I have a network of people that I trust and, have developed trust over years. And I would reach out to that network first and ask for, recommendations or referrals. And then just, like anything, I would want to sit down and, ask those questions. One, is this an individual I would feel comfortable working with? Would I enjoy working with this individual? And then I would ask, questions about their body of work, maybe ask for some, if they could provide some referrals or some things that they've worked on, and I could check really from there their body of work. And then, from there, I think you look at, their pricing structure, their thought process, how they can position you in whatever, situation or circumstance. And then I think you can kind of just weigh out the pros and cons and process of elimination. And hopefully from there, you could select someone that could represent you well.
Yeah, thanks for those thoughts. And if anyone has other thoughts too, feel free to jump in on that. And I'll state a little bit about my experience as an attorney. Aaliyah, go ahead.
So I don't know. I'm just thinking, if I understand right, you said that if you were an attorney, there's a law that you can't have a law practice, right? If you have the money to own a law practice, I don't see why you couldn't hire people who are qualified. I understand the importance of being qualified and being certified. Because I wouldn't want somebody represent me that didn't understand the laws better than I did. So I like that there's a standard, but controlling the income or the way you charge, I think should come across on how well you do, and not versus of just because you're an attorney, here's your price. Anyway, that's just my thought.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So from my experience as an attorney, when someone calls me on the phone, I've never once had a potential client ask me what grades I got in law school. I've had maybe 2 potential clients ask me where I went to law school. I've had, I think, 2 people, maybe a handful more, and just a handful of people ask me how many of the whatever they're asking me to do, they've asked me how many of those I've done. Most people just call up, they talk to me for a minute, and if I give them an answer that they feel comfortable with for whatever reason, whether they feel I gave a lot of information and so they feel like I know what I'm talking about, or I responded in a way that they like my personality or something, then they say, well, I want you to do this for me. So what does that look like? And I'll often even ask people and say, hey, I always highly recommend that you shop around. You call a few attorneys, see the differences, get different advice, check it out a little bit. And it has been super interesting to me that there are extremely few people that do that. Extremely few people will call more than 1 or 2 attorneys and get different positions or thoughts, or see the different pricing structures even. It's just, they're very much, I decided I like you based on one conversation with you. And as I've thought about that, one of the things I feel is that the licensing law makes it so that people start to trust the government to fully vet attorneys. And so once you're licensed as an attorney, everybody assumes that you're qualified because there's this licensing law that's meant to protect you from bad attorneys or from people that don't know the law. But I can't tell you how many times as an attorney I've worked in situations where someone went and got attorney advice. The attorney was doing something in a field they didn't know, and they ended up, giving bad advice or causing problems for the person. And they come to me later and to get it cleaned up. That's a very common situation. And as I've looked at that, I thought, are these licensing laws helping people or are they hurting people? Because our mentality starts to become, oh, he's an attorney, he's got a license, so he knows what he's talking about. And then we start to doubt ourselves on whether we can question them, whether we can, check around, get better advice. And I contrast that with chiropractic care. Here in Utah, if you go to dental school, you can practice. Sorry, not chiropractic. I was thinking orthodontic care. Assuming you go to dental school, you can practice orthodontics here in Utah. Even if you're not specifically trained on it, you can get specific training and advertise that to people. But we've gone with one of our children, we've been looking at orthodontics, and Palin's taken them to a number of different dentists and orthodontics, and it's amazing to see how different every single one is in their pricing, in their approach. Some of them want to take out 4 teeth and do major stuff. Some of them just say, oh, you just need, a little bit of widening in the jaw. I mean, it's a very large difference across the board. And again, there's not a specific license for orthodontic care here. You just get your dental license and you can do that, kind of like with the law. If you get your law license, you can do anything legally, even though the body of law is so expansive that there's no way that I know it all as an attorney, but I'm licensed to practice it all. And so we talk about this a little because licensing laws are generally meant, they say we're going to set a minimum standard of performance. But once those licensing laws are in effect and consumers know that, I've seen a lot of harm come because they just trust what the person says. They take the first recommendation. And it's not to say that licensing laws mean we can't ask these questions. We can certainly still take that responsibility. But if you think about a world where there is no licensing law, kind of like the attorneys are going to now, they're saying, oh, this is crazy. They have non-attorneys directing what legal work's done and how it's done and things. You can get to a place where, is it really as bad as they say? Or will it be like orthodontic care where there is a wide range of options, but people can shop around and check that out and competition can help drive those prices down. So I don't fully know the answer to that, but those are some of the considerations to think about. Is it fully necessary to have licensing laws in so many areas? Or can people take on the responsibility to say, hey, I'm going to shop around, I'm going to ask around on these things? And where would we be? Would we be better off if people realized they had that responsibility to vet attorneys to ask things like, how many wills have you done if you're going to do my will? Because one of the things that I could see happening is if you have a situation where attorneys you can't rely on a license, there's just no license for attorneys, then you can go to a place and say, how many of these have you done? And if you've done 100 or 1,000, how many times have you been sued over them? How many times has your client been sued because of your work? How many times have you been sued for malpractice? Those are questions that you should ask any attorney or doctor, but we don't often. But I think if we didn't have the licensing laws, we might start to get into that mindset more of saying, well, I've got to really dig in and ask these questions. We'd start to get websites about how to choose a good attorney, how to choose a good doctor. Ask them some of these basic questions. And ultimately, one of the things that would happen, I think that would be interesting, is if you're a brand new attorney and it's your first will, you're going to charge someone quite a bit less for that if you have to disclose that. And if you just have to disclose on your website, I've been an attorney for 1 year, these are my grades, when I went to school or I didn't go to school, I just picked it up on my own. But there are people out there that know the law incredibly well and are incredible lawyers, but they're not licensed just because they never went to law school. But they could advertise and say, hey, I've never been to law school, but here's this or that, and you could get different accreditation bodies that step in. We see that happen in the free market where different groups will say, well, if you're part of us, we have standards of excellence that we hold to, and so you can trust us. And they will then create the bodies that vet and create the trust and advertise and things. But all that ultimately leads to a place where consumers have a lot of choice. Obviously, a lot of people that can claim things too. So there's the harm side of it. And so as we look at it, I think it's helpful to look at the balance. And so we'll go to the next slide here. This is one that people are, again, this is one where Utah is decreasing licensing, and people are pretty concerned about it and pretty concerned that there'll be some serious issues in the next few years in Utah. But Susan, are you available to read that one for us?
Sure. Utah is experiencing a significant increase in the cost of housing. Even with all of the general contractors fully employed, homes are not being built fast enough. In an attempt to help lower home prices and increase the supply of homes, Utah lowered the requirements to obtain a general contractor's license so that anyone that attends 25 hours of class and passes a test and background check can be licensed as a general contractor. Critics contend that Utah is now the wild, wild west with construction and that many people will be harmed by poor construction. Was this a good or bad move for Utah?
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on that? If you
Well,
can just go take a 25-hour class.
Yes, if anyone's shown you can learn enough in a 25-hour class to be a good contractor, I wouldn't think so, but I don't know what the usual is. I mean, I always think about going to college. I don't think general contractors usually have to do that. Do they? What do they have to do now?
Usually general contractors have to have a certain amount of years of experience.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily school-based, but it was experience-based before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd worry a bit about how they would be able to make sure the house stood up.
Yeah, what about you, Leah?
Well, my neighbor, he took off his business for 2 years so he could go work for another contractor to get that 2 years experience to get his contractor's license. I also had a father-in-law who was the handyman that did everything. He built his own house, he plumbed, he did everything. And my husband, when he goes and does work in my house, I'm like, how do you know what you're doing? Because that's the son of a plumber. We don't need to hire somebody else. So, and he does an amazing job. I mean, he gets compliments all the time for the work that he did. So it's so one of those things. I think you opened my eyes. It's like, we really do need to ask questions. I tend to get so busy, like, oh, I just trust you. But I like how you put the responsibility back on us, because I am, I usually preach, it's be responsible. So I like how for anything you do, you need to be somewhat educated yourself to know what questions to ask and to understand their knowledge. So I think we need to stop being ignorant in all things and maybe be a little bit knowledgeable in some things to know what to ask. And so I think you're just opening my eyes again. It's like, oh, orthodontist, yeah, okay, do it, get it done. But I didn't ever think about, oh, I should shop around. So good thoughts.
And it is, and to your point, it is interesting because there are those people that worked really hard for 2 years, and now, how do you think they feel? Now they're really upset. Another thing with Utah right now is for years Utah's preached that you have to take the bar exam and pass that to be qualified as an attorney, and only people that can pass the bar exam are capable of being qualified. Well, what happens? Coronavirus hits, and Utah says, oh, we can't have people sitting in a room together to take the test. So guess what? We'll just cancel it for July. And if you want to be admitted to the bar, if you were lucky enough to graduate this year from certain law schools, then we've determined that you just come work with an attorney for 360 hours as an apprentice, and we'll let you into the bar. So the bar exam requirement's been waived, and because of coronavirus, but it goes back to this interesting thing of, then it begs the question, well, is the bar exam relevant? Because if you can just have attorneys work for 360 hours with an attorney, then you know what? Why is that test relevant? And if you ask most attorneys, I mean, if I went and took the bar exam right now, I'd probably fail it, because it tests on so many things that you never use as an attorney. I mean, almost everything on the bar exam is not relevant to anything that I do as an attorney. You don't ever practice contract drafting, one of the super basic skills. Law school you never write a contract in law school. You never draft a contract. I mean, you study contracts, they say, but you just study court cases where people fight over contracts. And it's just very high level. And so again, you get to this place of saying, but then all these attorneys are upset, going, well, I had to take the bar exam. They shouldn't let anyone in. And their whole reasoning and push to keep the bar exam is because they had to do it. And I look at it and say, well, you all admit the bar exam was pointless, but you had to do it, so we want other people to do it. And
How does one decide when they're making, that how many hours would be?
for practice,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like they said 360 hours. So how does that decided? I mean, is it too much, too little? Or, I mean, it sounds better than the bar exam, actually, but
no, I actually agree too. You do an apprenticeship, you get some real learning, get an attorney to sign off that you actually have skills and knowledge and competence. To me, it's way better approach than the bar exam. But yeah, it's a great question, because if you want to go cut hair, you have to log over 2,000 hours of practice and supervised experience to just get a license to cut someone's hair. And I have a brother who gets very frustrated by that. He says, I can cut hair, I'm really good at it. And he is good at it. And he does family and things. And but 2,000 hours, that's a lot of time to get a license to cut hair. And where attorneys can get admitted with only 360 hours, over a 6-month period. They have 6 months to put in 360 hours. And so it creates this interesting thing where, yeah, you ask the question, well, who decides this? Is it, do the cosmetologists want the 2,000 hour requirement to keep their rates up and keep people out? Do the attorneys want the bar exam to help keep their rates inflated? The other thing with the bar exam rates is each state decides they basically curve the bar exam in every single state, and they decide the percent of people that pass and fail in the state. And it's not a hard number. It varies some each year, so that they try and claim some credibility. But California consistently fails about 50% of the people that take the bar exam. It's not necessarily because you're not qualified to be an attorney. It's just, they just do that. If you're taking the bar exam, they're going to fail 50%. Utah only fails about 12 to 14% of people that take it. And that's just a choice Utah's made. So if you come here and take the bar exam, you're far likely to pass it. If you go to California, they just restrict it, and the California attorneys charge crazy amounts of money. They'll be easily charging $1,200 an hour in LA for their work. And again, to your question of, well, who starts to set these? Are these really now being driven by consumer protection measures? Or are they now being taken over by these vested interests, by these attorneys and these others that say, well, I took the test, so others should have to, or I worked for 2 years, so others should have to? Well, if that was an actual necessary requirement, maybe that's the case, but we shouldn't evaluate that based on what I had to do necessarily. We should evaluate it on what's actually necessary here. And in this situation, it's super interesting with the general contractor. I actually feel in this situation, there will be a lot of harm to Utahns. with the contractors, but I feel it will be because we're still claiming these people are licensed. And when Utah puts that licensing certification on something, people trust it. They've been taught to trust it implicitly. And I think that when a state actually licenses something, it does need to take some level of review on something, or choose just to say, we've chosen to not license contractors and let anyone be a general contractor as long as they've taken this training, but they're not licensed. And I think in that situation, Utah could still very much keep the license and say, we have licensed people who have experience in these other things, but we allow non-licensed general contractors to go out and do things. And then the individuals could say, oh, you're an unlicensed contractor? Well, I want a licensed one. And then the licensed one could say, well, we're in high demand. And so, this is how much it costs. And then people could look at the cost savings, and then they could start to talk to the unlicensed one and say, well, you're unlicensed, but tell me why you can do this. Tell me why you're an okay choice. I like your cost price, your price a lot more in things. But when Utah takes that license and doesn't change it, and Utahns have grown accustomed to this mindset of this is what it means to have a general contractor's license, then I think that there's a lot of issues that could be there. And so to me, when we back down from licensing, when maybe we've gone too far, I think we absolutely need to change the terminology, change the classification, something to alert the consumers that there is a difference here. Otherwise, we're not protecting consumers at all. We're just setting them up for more problems because of the way that we've ingrained the licensing concepts in their mind. It'd be kind of like, I guess Utah's kind of doing this too with the law. They're allowing paralegals. If you go to school and get a paralegal degree, 2-year paralegal associate's degree, you can practice some areas of divorce and debt collection law. And they're not super complex areas, but these people can advertise themselves as a licensed legal specialist that can do these things. And they aren't called attorneys, so it is a little bit different, but for the most part, it's pretty similar concept that Utah's backtracked, but hasn't created a big difference in the classification to help alert people to those things. And so, again, I don't necessarily feel it's the government's job to alert us to everything. But I do feel that in this situation, when the government created the mindset in the first place, to back down right now will cause more problems. And so that's just a thought. And I've looked at it and I've thought, I think this is going to backfire. I think there will be a lot of issues, and we'll swing back to a place of more regulation, which I think is unfortunate. And it could be avoided with, just calling it something different, addressing this differently. One other one to pass out on licensing before we move on is that Utah passed a law to do mental health testing of students in the school system. They want to start promoting yearly mental health assessment. But they also knew that there's nowhere near enough mental health professionals in Utah to take on that load. And so with the legislation that they had proposed on mental health testing yearly, there was another piece of legislation that added for a nurse practitioner, if you're a nurse practitioner in the state of Utah, it was for a physician's assistant, a PA. If you're a physician's assistant in the state of Utah, then they were adding in that you are now authorized by law to do mental health assessments. And it was just a change in the licensing classification. And I didn't check to see if that one passed or not. I should have checked before this, but I don't know if it passed or not. It was a proposed bill. But it was pretty amazing to say, well, Utah, what qualifies a physician's assistant to be doing mental health assessments? And so again, on these licensing laws, these consumer protection issues, once they're there, there's a lot of considerations that start to drive them. And we have to be very wary about recognizing, is this a good thing? Are we taking responsibility from people? Are we, saying that the government's now going to control all this and you don't have to check, or what is it? Because if a physician's assistant started advertising that they did mental health services, I wouldn't want to go to one. And I would hope that there would be some kind of required disclosure that I was never specifically trained in this. I'm just allowed by law to do it. But I think we should have that with attorneys too. I was never specifically trained to do this. I'm just figuring it out as I go.
What, on this mental health, what are they done with the assessments? I mean, what's the result after the assessment? Do you have any?
So the assessment law just passed in February, I think, and they're still finalizing the regulations on it for this upcoming school year. And so it hasn't been implemented yet in Utah. I've actually participated with some of the language of the regulations, but that is we haven't seen yet the results of that and what happens.
Okay, I have lots of friends who would rather go to the physician's assistant in the doctor's office than the doctor.
For
Feel
sure.
like much better service and consideration of their problem than they do from the doctor. So it's an interesting.
Yeah. It is. It's just that one of the things the state has told us repeatedly, again, this is one of the things that at least they've pounded through us, is you have to have these certified licensed people. You can't have some random untrained person doing these things.
Yeah.
And from what we know, physician's assistants aren't highly trained in the mental health side of things.
Okay.
I agree that you get far better care. And again, one of the questions is, are the licensing laws starting to interfere with your quality of care on the medical side? To go see a general doctor and just get general information and help, do you need to restrict the flow, of people into those doctors at that point? And we see that the physician's assistants, to your point, they're providing better care, at least in people's opinions. They like them more, they get better care, they get better attention. One reason that happens is because it's an easier, you don't have to do as much work to get that license. And when the state opens it up and says, well, we'll let you do this, this, and this, then people really respond well, and they respond well. And so to me, that's a sign that potentially our licensing laws have gone too far. And on the health side of things, with the extreme cost of health, I look at it and say, do we really need someone that's gone to medical school for 8 years to push the x-ray button, or to be, to oversee that? They don't necessarily push it, but the x-rays need to be under the care of a licensed doctor. Or could we have an x-ray technician program that you go through in a month? You're a certified x-ray tech, and you can just open up an x-ray clinic. People go get x-rays, and then you ship them out to whatever doctor needs to look at it. Or strep throat, do we need doctors swabbing for strep throat? Or can we reduce that? Can we start to carve out a lot of these pieces and say, what is it we really need a doctor trained for 8 years to do? And can we reduce that workload and the access to the doctors? I know here in Utah, I imagine it's the same elsewhere, but when we want to get into a doctor, we call the doctor for an issue with one of my kids, and we talked to them in May, and they said, yeah, our first opening is in July. And this is just a family doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Not a specialist, not anything. And so again, we're getting to this place where Utah is with the general contractors is saying, wow, the demand is far exceeding our capacity of the licensing, and it takes a certain amount of time to get there. And so it's an interesting thing to say, how do we balance this? And how do we get to a good place?
Seems to me like there's another issue there, Austin.
Yeah.
A physician's assistant is working in a doctor's office, and they can do maybe 80 or 50 or some percentage of what the doctor can do just as well as the doctor can. And hopefully they can recognize when they're getting out of their, if something is beyond their range, and they can consult the doctor. But now if you say, okay, they can do this mental health stuff, are they still gonna be working? Is there still a doctor there they can go to, or somebody that's competent in that area that they're working under and they can go to when they recognize they're getting out of their range?
Yeah, it's a great question. The law didn't expressly, the law just required that the physician's assistant work under a licensed doctor. Here in Utah, again, it's super interesting to look at, and I've worked on this with some clients. Physician's assistants are allowed to own their own clinic, so long as a doctor has a certain percentage of ownership in the clinic. And what happens in a lot of the physician's assistants owned clinics is that the doctor basically logs in to a computer, they scan through physician assistant reports for the day, and they just stamp them and say approved, 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 approved. And then that doctor gets paid a certain amount to approve things at the end of each day. So to your point, it was designed that yes, they were supposed to go to doctors when they're getting out of their realm of comfort. But I know for certain with the way it functions in practice, and this gets back to the attorney side, when you have non-attorneys and others in there, the level of supervision gets very very loose, and the drive for profit gets very high, where a doctor goes, oh, I supervise by just logging in and clicking yes, 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 yes on these cases, and they make a lot of money off of it with very little time. And over time, generally, some of these clinics, it gets to the place where they never even see the doctor. He never shows up. It's literally just logging in. And so it's an interesting conundrum to be in. But Utah didn't expressly require that for mental health, they go to a mental health certified person. They can still do that under the realm of a doctor. But it goes back to the attorney side too. If the client comes to me and says, Austin, will you do a divorce for me, or will you represent me in criminal court? I've never done that. You know, I can look at the law, but there's so much to the law about the rules of court, where there's so many unspoken rules of court and things, that I would say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm definitely out of my league. You need to go to a family law attorney or criminal law attorney. But I'm allowed by law to do it. I could take the case and I wouldn't get in trouble under the licensing law, even though I had zero understanding of what I was doing. So it's certainly an interesting balance. You know, these laws put things in there, but at the end of the day, profits often push people to different places. And that is, again, why the attorneys are screaming, because I think actually some attorneys realize I'm going to be pushed to do unethical things all the time. And I actually believe that. I've seen in corporations time and time again how companies will require their general counsel to do things that are very wrong, very unethical, but it's in the pursuit of money. And so I do think that attorneys actually have some valid points when they say, oh, if you're bringing money into this, it's going to create a lot of other issues. My only response to them is, well, money's already a part of it. You get to make the decision on money, and you're already pushed to, do things you shouldn't for money. But these physicians assistants are too, and so part of this is figuring out how to balance that drive for profit to help protect people. But it is a good point you bring up, where again the state, I think, can help to balance things if they do this, but often there's a lot of other interests that drive these laws. So we'll look at this one and talk about the Do Not Call Registry. The government was concerned that there's a high amount of bothersome phone calls coming in. People are getting, these companies are taking advantage of the white pages. They're just going through and putting every phone number into their system and starting to call it. You're getting called at all times and places and things. So you had the Do Not Call Registry. You could go put your number on it. If you did that, what it was is the government would update that list every certain number of days, and companies were required to check their database of phone numbers against the Do Not Call Registry and take off anyone on the Do Not Call Registry. So what are some of the pros and cons that came from the Do Not Call Registry?
Life seems so much better. They just did it, we did it lately. I mean, so that we're getting a lot less calls now.
Okay,
Almost.
so
I mean, they did the cell phone thing.
yeah,
And I don't know, there's just peace. And we don't get that many calls, but I mean, regular calls. So, but when we get one, it's usually we know that's someone we want to answer. But I mean, we don't answer if we don't, know who it is, but just the constant noise was pretty bad.
yeah. So one of the pros is that there are less phone calls coming in, because without it, people would just call and call and call. Has anyone seen any cons, or think of any cons associated with the Do Not Call Registry?
I just think, and I'm, not very well versed on this, but I find it interesting to, a lot of these political candidates and things. I just tend to wonder where they're getting phone numbers, right? And they're getting to be some of the worst, where, they're sending out these text messages constantly and, different things. So I'm just curious to see, these, when you provide your numbers and different things to these do not call lists, what's the government doing with that list? Right.
Yeah.
And where are they gathering all these contacts, I guess, is one of my questions.
That's a good point. Under the Do Not Call Registry, political campaigns are exempted from the Do Not Call Registry.
Okay.
So political people, when there's bans on robocalls or there's bans on different calls in general, basically the courts have said, well, that's political speech. We have to allow political speech. So what it's resulted in is the government having this massive database of phone numbers that they have to give out publicly to everybody, because the businesses have to be able to scrub their numbers against it. And then you have all these politicians that have realized, or maybe they realized before, as part of this, there's now a huge database of numbers, and they can use them for political purposes. And so what's happened with the Do Not Call Registry is, some people have definitely benefited where their numbers were on companies that follow the law. But there's other people who have extremely high numbers of phone calls right now, insane numbers of phone calls from companies that are calling from Nigeria or out of the country, and they managed to set things up in a way that the number appears still to be coming from inside the United States. But when you're connected, you're talking to someone from, you're talking to a Nigerian prince or others, the ones that email and things. And all these companies can have access to these numbers. They're outside the country. The politicians have access to them. There's other groups that are exempted from the Do Not Call Registry. They don't tend to abuse it as much, but they can. I know that, for example, with Red Cross and Blood, they're a nonprofit, so they have different requirements. And Red Cross calls me all the time. I mean, they're in desperate need for blood right now, but I can't tell you how many phone calls I get. They called me Saturday night. They called me Sunday. They go through things. I've actually programmed their number in my phone so that I know it's them when they call, because they're always calling. And it's not to say that I don't respect the need, to give blood. For sure, I have no problem giving blood and things, but it is something where I look at it and say, yeah, I donate as much as I can, and that's not as often as you would like, but it is an interesting issue now where there's now this power center of numbers aggregated, and people that don't follow the law can start to pursue that. And then what happens too with the Do Not Call Registry, and this is an issue I saw frequently for businesses. It was extremely common for a business to have a number mistakenly keyed in by an employee. or even someone when they're online, they enter a number incorrectly. And so the company adds them to their list. They start calling because they have opt-in rights and things. But that person never actually authorized it, that's on the receiving end. And they've created penalties for every single call that violates the do not call. So if you're a law-abiding company, I've represented companies that they've done everything they can. They've done the scrub, they've put technology in place and things, but they still get a few errant phone calls that go out. And these people now, what's happening is law firms have created apps that you can put on your phone that recognize when you get calls from companies. And if you're on the do not call list, it will actually register in the app and it will alert these law firms that they might be able to file a lawsuit. And so these companies, with every phone call that goes out, there's these people armed with these apps and things, and they're starting to get hit with these lawsuits. And the lawsuits penalize them for every single errant phone call and make them pay attorney's fees. So these attorneys are getting super rich off this do not call stuff. Which again, the government says, well, we don't have to, hire police to go do that. That's great because it's a self-policing mechanism, and there could be good things to that. But at the end of the day, if you're in business and you're trying to make a go of it, it gets to be incredibly expensive and difficult when your employee keys a number in wrong, and there's just no, there's no forgiveness, no mercy, you can't show in court that you followed best practices. It was just a mistake. And these aren't even people that are being requested to be removed from the list. They just register, oh, I got a call. The app records it. Then they sit there and let the company call back each time because they get another $1,500 from it for every call that comes back. So we have the same issue right now in some ways with the CAN-SPAM Act. It's certainly helped. That's the email act where it says you gotta provide people unsubscribe, options and different things, and that certainly helps reduce the number of mail coming to us, email. But at the end of the day, too, the penalty for one errant email that goes out incorrectly is $42,000 to a company, and that's just just again on the balancing side of things to say, well, did that really cause someone $42,000 worth of headache? But to the companies, they're so punitive in nature that it's very difficult. And I'm not as concerned about big corporations necessarily. I just represent small business owners trying to make a go of it. And when you have these types of high regulations that come in, what it starts to do is it makes it very difficult for small companies to get started. And these laws that become very protective of consumers, the big companies have realized, oh, that makes it very expensive now to operate. And so if we push for these laws, it starts to shut out our smaller competition and make it so we're the only companies left. As an example of that's happening with Monsanto, they've pushed extensively. They manufacture seeds. They're a large seed company, and they have a lot of money. And so they push the government for some protection regulations to say we need to have cleaner seeds. There's companies that are making seeds that aren't super clean, and it's a health hazard or something. And so they push for these very stringent seed cleaning measures to go in place. And then the government was really proud, and they came out and talked about how it's protecting people from disease, or I don't know what the claims were even. Didn't make sense to me. But at the end of the day, Monsanto was one of the only companies that had the money to produce that kind of seed, and it pushed a lot of smaller production people out of business. I see that with people I represent that work on herbs or other products. The FDA has such high manufacturing standards that you have to have a lot of money to produce those. So again, on the balance side of things, these larger companies have realized, hey, this is great. We can push competition out by making the standards and the barriers to entry so high. And that's essentially the same with the licensing laws. And so these companies have started using these fairly aggressively, and we start to see the loss of a lot of smaller companies along the way, and the aggregation of larger corporations with it. So it's one thing I want everyone be aware of that just because something's labeled as a consumer protection law doesn't always mean it is. You know, they can help at times, but they can also give a lot of power when they go too far. And so to me, we have to really focus on this balance still with these types of things.
Well, thank you.
And this is just a, you know, this is a very interesting to me consumer protection measure. We'll be done here in just a minute. We won't really go into it today, but you know, this was very much the government protecting people from coronavirus. And in most states, if not all, they ordered nearly all businesses to close. And as I've looked at the response here and different options, it's really interesting to see. Again, if you start to track, if you say track the money, you know, who makes money off of this? Who hurts from this? Obviously, there's big companies that have been hurt, but there's also people that have done extremely well as a result of this, and some of the powers that be and things, and you know, and all these decisions of saying, were there other ways to go about this? Because in Utah right now, they have allowed businesses to reopen, but things really haven't changed from the time that they shut them down. We actually have more cases now. We have, you know, more spread of it, but they're letting businesses reopen again, and they're trying to address it through other ways. And I'm not saying, again, this isn't, we're not going to go into an evaluation of necessarily all the ins and outs of it, but it's just to recognize when decisions are made. I listened to this with Utah was trying to pass a new tax bill, and one of the representatives said, just tell me who the winners and losers are, because I want to understand that. And he wants to make sure that there's winners in his voting district associated with the law, and they know that there's winners and losers. You know, if we pass a new licensing regulation, it's going to hurt some people, it's going to help some people. And we're not talking about just the consumers, we're talking about the businesses on the other side. And these legislators are very aware of that. And it becomes a very complicated game they play, very complicated game for businesses to operate in. But ultimately, to me, it becomes where we lose sight of the real goal of creating an appropriate balance, and we start to do things that favor some groups and disfavor others. And that's not, to me, that's very opposite the approach. Again, maybe we end up with the same result in the end, but I think that if we always go through the right approach to how we approach these problems, we'll be in a good place. So just a couple of considerations at the end. Most of the consumer protection laws now that I see, I deal with good small business owners. They're good people trying their best to make a go of it. And there's so many consumer protection measures now that they run afoul of it. And now they're facing criminal problems because of not knowing about a law or having an errant email or a phone number that goes out. And I find a lot of good people in trouble that never even tried to defraud someone, but it's just the laws are so onerous and complex that they can't follow them all. I've also seen in a lot of industries how these consumer protection measures stop good businesses from actually succeeding, where the laws are very strict and they're very costly to comply with. And if you want to comply, then it drives up your costs so much that people don't buy from you. And the businesses that cut the corners and are willing to take those risks and kind of run low key and things, they can take away a lot of your business. This happens a lot in construction. It's a common claim that there's an unlicensed contractor that came out. And if the government passes a consumer protection law, but they don't have enough enforcement, then what it does is it makes it so that the people following the law get damaged by it, because when there's not enough enforcement, companies can run roughshod over it and do whatever they want, and that creates a problem for a lot of business owners. And I see a lot of people give up and go out of business because they can't comply with the laws and compete. And in Utah, just as another real example, they want to pass a sales tax on services here. And the government has said that they're calculating in that there'll be a 40% non-compliance rate for companies not charging sales tax on services. And with a 40% non-compliant rate, they didn't put in extra money to go find the non-compliant people. That creates an industry where there's a lot of business that starts to flow to that 40% that's non-compliant. And those charging the sales tax on their services, which is pretty expensive, will start to lose business. And that was a big fight for a lot of the businesses. They said, you can't pass this law unless you're going to ramp up your enforcement to drive out this 40%. But again, that wasn't part of the balance in Utah. So that's an issue that happens. And then just because someone says this is to protect you or to help you, don't believe it just off the the basis of it. We should obviously always have the responsibility to protect ourselves and take that on. But we need to really look at it and say, who's pushing this? Why is this happening? And in Utah, every year, you can just pull up the bills. They have barely accessible, and you can look at them and say, whoa, who's sponsoring this? You reach out to him and say, why do you want this bill in place? He'll tell you a reason, or she'll tell you a reason. And then you can follow up with them and say, no, there's other interests here. This isn't appropriately balanced. We need to really look at this. And there's so little input to legislative reps from citizens that this kind of input goes a long way. So I highly recommend it. And then just the last consideration, I think, if we ask the government to fix everything for us, we're going to end up in a place where there's so many regulations that no one except for the largest companies can comply with them all. And we have to be willing to take the responsibility on ourselves to do things and to vet things out. And so in any of these considerations, when you go to any licensed professional, I'd say start asking the questions, start surprising them. How many houses have you built if I'm going to hire you? Ask those types of things. And it will really help create a mindset in society that we don't need the government to fix everything. Yes, it needs to step in at times, but we need to always be looking for that balance and not demand that every single thing be made right. So those are some of at least the thoughts to me with the consumer protection side. Sorry, we went just a few minutes over. But are there any questions or thoughts people wanted to throw out at the end? Okay, well, thanks for joining us today. It was a smaller group today, but I think it was still a good discussion and a good look at some of these things. But ultimately, it's good to decide for yourself and really start to get involved, to recognize what is happening. And if you're upset about costs going up, maybe one reason the costs are rising is because of new laws. And then again, we look who's benefiting from that and who's being harmed, and is the balance really appropriate? So those are some of the things there, but we'll follow up. We'll keep doing these moving forward, and we appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Austin. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you.